let me start by saying that affordable housing remains a priority in this administration. When I became mayor, I separated the Department of Housing and Community Development from HABC because I thought it was really important that we focus on effectiveness and efficiency, and that there was really a need for a focus on affordable housing in the city. It took a little while to get that done, but we did. As you all well know, Mr. Braverman heads our Housing and Community Development effort, and then we have Janet Abrams, who heads our Housing Authority of Baltimore City. I stand here today with the advocates from across the city to announce a historic commitment to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. My administration will allocate over a 4-year period at least $20 million annually to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The fund will be supported through a combination of legislation from the City Council, general obligation bonds, and other revenue sources. We must continue to be balanced and to balance our housing needs, our issues around the city, economic development, social justice. All of those things need to be connected. I tell people when we think about some of the issues that the city is facing, whether it is crime, whether it's drug addiction, whether it is mental illness, or just a lack of affordability, you can't treat people, you can't help people unless they have a place to live. And that's what this commitment is about. And many of you know we've also created a neighborhood investment fund, which we did not sell our garages, but we leased them, bonded them, and created and raised $57 million. $50 million will go immediately into neighborhood investment. We're investing in neighborhoods and communities that have been underinvested in for decades. And I think I've given examples of what we're doing. Just when we, for example, brought back the $1.2 billion to build new schools in our city. Schools are great, we need them, but we need communities as well. And so a real example for those of you who are out there looking for examples is to look at Pimlico Road, where across the street were boarded up houses and dilapidated housing, where the housing department went in, helped to lay the foundation, and was able to attract investment that now provides housing for people who have children in those schools, who will now be able to get mortgages for $600 a month, where they were paying $900 a month in rent. And we're offering grants to the other neighbors in that community so they can fix up their houses too. So I'm excited about today's announcement because I know it puts us one step closer to continuing to move Baltimore forward. You know we're focused on reducing violence every single day in the city, down around 16% in terms of homicides, and in some categories 26% in burglaries, 20% in robberies. So we're focused. We understand the problems that the city faces, but we know that if we just continue to focus and tackle them, we will continue to move Baltimore forward. You know, I've seen these kind of conditions in other cities across the country, and I tell someone, we just came back from Portland. I visited other cities, and we've experienced homelessness in the city ourselves. We know we have 500 people who are chronically homeless every night, sleeping on the streets of our city. We have about 3,000 people who are transient in and out of the city who are also homeless. And so we are focused to make sure that we address this issue. And if you go to other cities, like I've been to Seattle, San Francisco, Oakland, where tent cities are popping up all over, that's not our answer. Our answer is affordable housing. So again, we're excited about this effort. We thank the advocates for continuing to advocate on behalf of all of those who don't have a voice or believe they don't have a voice, but they do, they have it in you. And so we want you to know that we hear you, we support your effort, and we'll continue to move our city forward. I believe my colleagues are standing here because they support this effort, but I believe the legislation is going to be introduced through Mr. Bullock, I believe. So he's going to share a few words with us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's an extremely proud moment to be the lead sponsor on this piece of legislation. I've been the chair of the Housing and Urban Affairs Committee, and even though this is going before taxation, just want to let you know that housing has been a huge priority for me and also some of my colleagues. I represent the 9th District in West Baltimore, and we know that there are many people who are suffering, who are paying unaffordable rents, but we also have neighborhoods that are blighted. And this is true in both East Baltimore and West Baltimore, where I serve. And so having the support not not only of the mayor, but the council president, a majority of our colleagues, and also the advocates that are here. The reality is that none of this can be done by one individual or by one entity, but the fact is we have to work together. Housing is a major issue in Baltimore City, and this is a step in the right direction. It's not the be-all, end-all, but it's a great step in the right direction. So again, I thank you all for the support. I thank you for the attention to this issue, and look forward to working together to solve our issues as it relates to affordable housing. Thank you.
So I wanted to thank our comptroller for being here as well, because we own about 2,000, the city owns about 2,000 boarded houses themselves. We have about 16,000 that are boarded up in the city. And, you know, working with the comptroller, working with our city solicitor, you know, we're doing everything we can, and the housing department, to regain control of some of those other properties, because 16,000 is too many. You all have heard me, you've seen me walking through neighborhoods and communities. You know, I was in East Baltimore at North Avenue and Milton, where we're about to tear down at least four blocks of housing where trees are growing through them, housing that is infested, and housing that nobody can occupy. And so again, we believe that this is an effort in the right direction, and I want to thank you as well. I also now would like to have Michael Braverman, our Commissioner for Housing and Community Development, to come forward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You got a speech, Michael?
Not really. I just wanted to say thanks to you, Madam Mayor, and thanks to the Council President and members of the Council, Councilman Bullock, the Chair, and to our advocates for all the work that they have done, and for all the work that we've done together to get us to this moment, which is a great moment to be on together on the path forward for affordable housing in Baltimore City. I know the advocates here know this, but to share this with everyone else, there is an extraordinary need for housing assistance in Baltimore City. Just to get our arms around that, there's about 50,000 households that are severely cost burdened in the city, spending more than 50% of their income on rent, and 92% of those folks are at 50% or below of AMI, which is exactly the group that this legislation is targeted to help. This legislation will be dedicated to helping those at 50% or below of AMI, and 50% of it for 30% and below of AMI. That sounds like an interesting number, but let's just to say what that is. A family of four at 50% of AMI is making $46,000 a year, and a family of four at 30% of AMI is trying to make do on $27,000 a year. And that is 92% of the folks who are housing cost burden. I wanted to say that this we have all made a commitment to get to this $20 million number. I think that we have had a lot of good faith negotiations to get to the point where we have reduced the burden of the initial legislation together, which would reduce the yield to about $13 million on average, and the mayor has committed, along with the council, to make up that difference to get us to $20 million a year over the next 4 years. So reducing the cost burden with the amendments, but remaining committed, reducing the tax burden, but remaining committed to the $20 million, and providing that through general revenue sources. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund legislation also requires that there be a commission, and that commission will advise the housing commissioner and the mayor on how to set policy on how to spend that money. I think, Mayor, it's fair to say that we will be using those funds to increase access to affordable housing, reduce poverty and homelessness, strengthen the economy, boost economic mobility, improve health outcomes, and promote inclusive community development without displacement. So thank you, Mayor, and thanks to everyone here for the work that we've done so far.
Before I call on, thank you, Michael. Before I call on Destiny Ford, let me just say this. You know, I remember in my childhood growing up, and my dad always talking about the importance of owning a home. And this is what he used to say: one third of what you earn is what you could afford for your housing expense. You know, that includes your electricity, that includes everything. And I think you heard the numbers, 50%. People are paying 50% of their income on housing. And we expect them to feed their children. We expect them to send them to school. We expect them to clothe. It is unconscionable, and so that's why this is so important. And I hope the advocates understand that dividing these agencies up to get this kind of focus was really important to this effort, and that's why we're able to be here today. So I'm excited. So it is with great appreciation that I now introduce Destiny Ford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Destiny Watford. I just came from Benjamin Franklin High School, the school that I graduated from in South Baltimore, where I now spend every morning developing the next generation of leaders in Baltimore City. The students I work with see our city and their communities with absolute clarity. They see crumbling vacants on their walk to school. They see crime and unsafe conditions. They see a community that has been disinvested, ignored, and dumped on for decades. They, like me, do not accept these conditions are fixed, nor do they accept them as normal. But seeing the problem every day without the tools, without the power to make change, is a miserable experience to go through day in and day out. Which brings me to why today matters so much. Today, Baltimore is a profoundly different place than it was yesterday. Why? Because something remarkable, I'd even say miraculous, happened. An idea that came from residents of Baltimore, from the grassroots, to create new tools to address blight, vacants, and create permanently affordable housing with public resources backing it up, is now becoming a reality. Together, we have created a network of community land trusts to create and preserve affordable housing by, for, and with the residents of our community. And today, we're signing an agreement to direct $20 million of public resources every year, every single year, to support community land trusts and other tools to create permanently affordable housing across our city in the communities most in need. This agreement was forged through the relentless effort, creativity, and sacrifice of thousands and thousands of residents who, despite so many obstacles, are taking the lead to ensure that our city's resources meet our basic needs. Today, we are showing where powerful and transformative ideas come from. They come from people like us working together, organizing together, guided by our vision and our values. Now, starting today, when students at Ben Franklin walk down those very same vacants, we're going to see something else, something new. We're going to see that our city has made a profound choice to define the vacants not as some accident of history that we are stuck with, but as a public problem that we are dedicated to resolve and that we will not let go of. And you know what? Seeing this commitment, I see hope. I see a path forward that is different than it was yesterday for our city. For the generations, for the next generations, who are stepping up to shoulder the burden of creating a Baltimore that is healthier, safer, cleaner, and better than the way they found it. How we got here matters because it points to how we move forward. We got here for one main reason. The people of Baltimore got organized. The people of Baltimore developed a vision and a strategy to get resources flowing into our communities to address the vacants, the blight, and the need for affordable housing that stays affordable. They need to develop our communities without displacing us in the process. And we are here today because we have a mayor, Mayor Pugh, and a city council who share this vision to direct resources and opportunity to communities like mine in Curtis Bay, and so many others across Baltimore that have been used as dumping grounds for decades. Our city is in a different place today than it was yesterday. We're doing something big here. The challenge for us now is to act on this new Baltimore that we've created and use this to transform tomorrow and the next day and the next. The clock starts now. And I want to challenge all of us to act with the same urgency and commitment that delivered this breakthrough. We need to hold ourselves accountable, make sure this fund says that it will do, because if we do, the next generation of leaders in Baltimore are in a position to build from our success instead of dealing with our failures. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, let me stress to the advocates how important this is. And it is housing. It is reducing violence. It is putting social justice with economic opportunity. And so often we don't connect the two, and we should. And so as we continue to move forward together, it's how we stay connected. And as I said early on in my administration, that we would focus on affordable housing, but we also have to focus on the vacant houses that are in the city. I tell folks that every time a new mayor comes in, we want to change the program. We want to readdress the issue instead of building on what someone else has done. Like somebody said to me, you know, you need to come up with a new name for vacant to values. No, we need to improve the program and make sure that it works for everybody. I can't spend time changing titles. I want to spend time making things work. And so I am really grateful for all the advocacy, but more importantly, grateful for the future of Baltimore, because it is involvement by communities and neighbors and organizations that transform neighborhoods and communities. You know, it's just like, I tell people, it's just like everything else. You know, I ask people to ask what they can do. Whether it is the trash on the ground, it's one thing to put new, modern, compacted trash cans in neighborhoods, but the biggest weapon is your hand. You know, so what are we telling folks in our neighborhoods and communities? How to keep trash up off the ground, how to respect neighborhoods and communities so that when people walk through, that you're not walking through neighborhoods that have been trashed, or houses where trees are growing through the middle of them. So again, thank you all for your commitment. Thank you for working with us, and let's move forward. Thank you. Any questions?
I'd like to just give a practical explanation of how this money will be applied. What will it do in terms of addressing the lack of affordable housing? Does it build new housing? Does it subsidize rent? What does it do?
I think it does all of that, Jane. I think it does all of that. You know, the way we were able to get mortgages down to $600 a month in Park Heights is because of the subsidies that we provided. The way we even gave grants out to people in that block. And so that's what this kind of fund will be able to do. We'll be able to identify folks who are in that area that Michael pointed out, whose housing costs exceed their income to the point that they can afford housing. And so with the advisory board, which will consist of some of the advocates, we'll be able to make sure that we're directing that money properly. But it will subsidize housing. It would also help us to build new housing.
Do you think $20 million is enough? I mean,
Well, this is for this fund. You've got $50 million in the Neighborhood Investment Fund. You've got programs that are already in place at the Housing Department. And I think if you were to add up how much we're actually spending across the board, this is dedicated to this specific effort. But if you look at all the money that we're spending, what is it, Michael, 300 million?
Annually, probably at 250 million.
Right, so we're already spending about 250 million, so now we're adding this 20 million. This is for a specific focused category of folk. But you know, when you think about public housing and all the other subsidies, the Section 8 vouchers, I mean, all of that's affordable housing. But there are people who don't get Section 8 vouchers, you know, who can't afford to live where they're living. And so we've got to accommodate them too, because otherwise they end up on the streets as well.
Is there anything that will be done with this to hold property owners to account? You know, at the same time, I mean, Section 8 has a program, part of
Right.
the program is that you have to take care of property, the property owner. But how do you hold the property owner to account to make sure that the conditions meet basic, you know, standards?
Well,
We now have,
Jane, I would just say, for all rent, the thing about affordable housing up to now, almost all those affordable housing units have compliance obligations, are inspected. There's a lot of market rate affordable that hadn't been, so thanks to our partners on the council, we now have legislation that will require all rental housing in the city of Baltimore to be inspected. So there is a compliance component.
And that is really important because, as you well know, I mean, I've been to some of the Section 8 places, and you say how unconscionable that people can even live in these spaces. So to have those spaces inspected on a regular basis, which again calls for an increase in our budget for inspectors, because we've got to do it. I'm telling you, when I walk through some of these neighborhoods and I see some of these places, I'm like, I just don't understand how it got this far, or how trees get to grow in the middle of a house.
There's a large, also veteran homeless population. I know in DC they came up with separate veteran housing accommodations. Is that something that this would include as well?
Yes, it includes veterans as well.
So just to be clear, you do think that what's happening on 4800 in the Code Road, that could be a model of how it's been?
That's just one small project. This is I think, I don't think we spent a whole bunch of money on Pimlico Road, but we did do several of the houses there, and we are I'm telling you, to the point that, and I think the advocates would say to you that, people now have given up. They don't even believe you when you say you have a grant. I literally had to go knock on the door of some of the people on Pimlico Road and say, hey, we can help you, because folks don't believe it anymore. Because, there are folks who've lived in these neighborhoods for 40, 50 years, and, they've given up hope, and we're here to say not only is this going to be available, the Neighborhood Investment Fund is going to be available. And when you're building new schools in a neighborhood and community, I think we have a responsibility to make sure that the neighborhood is taken care of as well.
So basically, if somebody is in that position where you understand that many of them may be up around that 50%, where they're uncomfortable and they can feel it every month, that they might be able to contact and
Absolutely.
even if they're not in a desperate situation,
Yes.
it might be time
We want folks to be able to live comfortably.
to begin getting early
Right.
before it gets bad.
Yes.
But what most people see, I think, and we hear about, is all this construction downtown of all these really new, big, expensive apartments. And I think there's a lot more of those than the affordable apartments, based on what I've seen now. If there's more,
I think that's debatable, because, when we the $30 million grant that we got from HUD for, what's the name of the program? For the Choice Neighborhoods will attract $800 million in investment. That's in affordable housing. And what we're doing up on Park Heights, what we've done now is you got about, 17 acres out for development for affordable housing. Because the Neighborhood Investment Fund is not for downtown. The Neighborhood Investment Fund is for communities that have been underinvested in. And that's why when you see me walk in the streets of neighborhoods and communities, I'm in those neighborhoods and communities that have been neglected for decades. It makes no sense, for example, to be riding along Gwynns Falls Parkway where there's home ownership and you got 3 houses that are boarded up. It just makes no sense. We need to get to them. Michael will tell you, he gets a text almost every other day from me when I'm riding through a neighborhood and I say, well, what was the address? Whatever the address was, I got it wrong, and so I sent him the wrong address. I'm like, you can find it. It's right above the school. Find the house. The roof is falling down. I mean, he gets that all the time. But those things we can help fix. We shouldn't let neighborhoods fall completely apart before we address them, and that's part of what will take place. Okay, thank you all. Thank you. I have another big announcement. So this is a very exciting announcement. Shut that door. Shh. They're real excited. So I was traveling, and I won't even say where, and I heard that we've got a great opportunity in Baltimore. And they said, do you know about the Arts Social Club? Of course I know about the Arts Social Club. Well, the Arts Social Club is in competition for a $2 million grant. They're competing with other cities around the country. And so what we've got to do is get people to vote. And so the reason we're having this press conference is I wanted them to talk about the Arts Social Club, which was founded in 1905. For those of you who don't know, it's Pennsylvania. It's at Pennsylvania and North Avenue. They are an organization of African American men who met there. I think if you walk in there, you see all these historical pictures of individuals. This project will restore the historic marquee and install interior lighting to help launch a new arts and entertainment district. So I got some of the folks here, but I wanted to say to you all that we're really excited. But this is about voting. And so we've got to get everybody in Baltimore and beyond voting. The voting actually started yesterday.
Yes, to start off.
Yesterday, did you vote?
Yes, I voted on it.
Okay, all right. So there's a process for voting, so we need to explain that. And Councilman, I know you're excited.
Very excited.
And we've been working, the city has actually been working with the Arts Social Club to help do some of the restoration. But this, I think, will make a big, big difference in transforming a major corner in our city. And so I thought that, let me just give the address. It's voteyourmainstreet.org. So that's how you get on the site?
That's right.
And then you have to choose?
Yes.
Okay.
And
There are 20 cities, you all, that are competing for this, for partners in preservation through the Main Street Project. And so I think we have a really good chance here to win. And so this gives Baltimore an opportunity to really step up to the plate, ask what you can do. You can vote for the Arts Social Club. So without further ado, I'll let the councilman say a few words, and then I'm going to turn it over to Van, and so he can share with us.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for bringing attention to this opportunity that's being presented for the Arts Social Club. A lot of times, as a representative of West Baltimore, a lot of times people will comment that there is a lack of anchor institutions in West Baltimore and neglect some of the institutions that have been there historically that have provided resources, leadership, and stability in oftentimes unstable areas. And so I'm fortunate to have the Arts Social Club in my district because it's not just the building, it's the men who make up the club that really are the asset, that provide the resources, provide guidance, mentorship, and all kinds of other activities and initiatives for our community. So vote again. If you can vote twice, get your friends to vote, get your mother to vote.
Everybody in the household.
Yeah, make it mandatory. Because we need the resources. We need to be creative in identifying resources to enhance institutions throughout our community, and this is one vehicle to do so. So vote, vote, vote.
Dan?
okay. Yeah, the voting process itself is going to take place from now until October the 26th. And like it was explained, there are 20 different sites around the nation that we're competing within. So that $2 million is going to get split up amongst the top 10 winners. And so the way in which you vote is that you have to go through your email address or through Facebook to a link. And on that link, you set up a temporary password, and then you can vote 5 times every day between now and October 26th. So I wake up in the morning, I log in, I vote 5 times for our social club, and then I wait for that next morning. But most importantly is that we have to get the word out amongst the people of Baltimore City and also throughout the nation, so we can use social media in order to really push this campaign. And we're very, very, very happy that Baltimore City is in support of this, the mayor's office is in support of this, and we really look forward to winning this campaign. The purpose is to obtain a movie marquee as part of the restoration of our historic building. But most importantly is that we are intent on being an anchor or a light for the continued restoration of Pennsylvania Avenue as an arts and entertainment district. So there's some other things that we're doing to try to support that classification along that corridor for arts and entertainment. And there's a lot of other work that we have to do along that corridor other than the movie marquee. But most importantly right now, what we're after is the support from Baltimore City to help us to vote so that we can be able to obtain this grant to help to be a light along Pennsylvania Avenue.
Just to clarify, you'd be getting $2 million because you said there was 10 winners, and then it's $20 million broken up amongst the...
No, it's a $2 million.
Yes, $2 million divided amongst the top 10 winners.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if somebody wants to give us,
The rest of it.
Yeah, that would be great. And what we think is that this is very important because We are in full support. We very much want affordable housing so that the citizens of Baltimore can be able to stay in Baltimore and afford to live in Baltimore, but also most importantly, because we want to take that next step. We need to pay attention to commercial development in the African American community, and we feel that the Pennsylvania Avenue corridor is historic for art and entertainment. And we believe that even though the community itself may have some economic issues, but as far as internal talent, as far as our creativity and ability to create works of art, you know, we are very, very proud of that capability. And so we say, just as jazz, just as blues, just as rhythm and blues, or even hip hop starts in the African American community, it eventually spreads throughout the nation and around the world. And what we want to do is create a social environment whereby we can express ourselves culturally as a people. And we think that that will really add flavor to Baltimore City, to Charles Street, to Canton, with the complement of Pennsylvania Avenue being also an arts and entertainment district. We feel that that would really help Baltimore City.
So there are a lot of great things happening on Pennsylvania Avenue. This certainly is one of them. We'll be announcing the opening of the bowling alley as it relates to the Shake and Bake, because we did redo the skating rink. There's going to be a big tournament, a bowl-off, and we'll announce that later between Ray Lewis and President Young. So as we open that, that'll be up in the spring. We'll let you know about that. But this is an institution that has stayed alive on Pennsylvania Avenue and really does need the help. And the Baltimore Development Corporation is providing some assistance currently with this, and so we're excited. So you want to give that website again? Sounds a little complicated.
Well, there's several websites, but I prefer for you to give the one that you had on your document. We'll start.
VoteYourMainStreet.org. That's the headline in the Sun tomorrow. VoteYourMainStreet.org.
Yeah, and if you come to the www.artsocialclub.com, that should also provide you a link towards that website. And there are other organizations that are supporting us. Pennsylvania Avenue, Main Street, Upton Plan Committee, Druid Heights, CDC, Penn North Community Association. So there'll be several websites around Baltimore City that you can come to, and that link will be provided. But we really appreciate the mayor and city council for your support.
All right.
Can I
Any
ask
question?
a question about our social club?
Sure.
If somebody was from out of town and they wanted to come to Baltimore and some of the historic parts of West Baltimore, things like that, and they're interested in African American history, could they stop by our social?
Yeah, sure.
Should they look at the website first? Just talk a little about why they might want to do that and what. Go about that process.
Yeah, we are a part of the Heritage Trail already, and we very much have an interest in people who come to town to come and visit the Art Social Club, particularly for conventions and stuff like that. We would like to have a strategic alliance with businesses in downtown Baltimore area to provide our flyers and information on how they can get up to us, and even maybe provide, shuttle transportation up is what we would like to be able to see. But most importantly is the social life and the activity. So we're not just just a building. We are an active social organization. So, we have events. For example, we have a tribute to blues and rhythm and blues that's coming up soon. And we also support the community as well, because that area is a pretty tough area, and we have to do a lot of work community-wise as well. But if somebody comes to town and they're interested, they can go to that website or they can give us a call, and they're welcome to visit anytime.
A lot of old photos up on the wall, a lot of historical photos showing Pennsylvania Avenue back in the day, and some of the people who helped to work with the club from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, can I add something?
Sure.
And if somebody from around the nation thinks that they can really dance, come to Arts Social Club, and we'll show you whether you can really dance or not.
Okay. So you'll be on the floor. Okay.
Not at Arts Social Club.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Just a reminder that we have kicked off our 2020 census. I am the U.S. Conference of Mayors Chair, but I'm also moving our city forward to make sure we get this count right. I was in Washington on yesterday discussing the importance of the census and the importance of the count. Hashtag Be More Counts, that's our hashtag. And last week we launched our 2020 Complete Count Committee with Senator Barbara Mikulski and Congressman Elijah Cummings as our honorary chairs. I want you to know that on Saturday, the 29th, we will host the first 2020 Census Community Workshop, which begins at 9 a.m. at the Baltimore Convention Center. And so we're really excited. We've got a great group of folk, met with about 50 or 60 people who are right now a part of the Complete Count Committee. And one of the things that we're saying to folks is that the committees have to be representative of the entire community. So that's what we're infusing this committee with. This will be the first year that the census will be done online. So making computers available to folks throughout our city is going to be important too. And we've also learned that the federal government is not spending the same amount of money that they spent previously on promoting the census. So we're talking with the philanthropic community, we'll be talking with the business community, because we need those messages to be delivered through individuals that people feel comfortable having a conversation with. If we don't get our count right, what happens is that we lose about $1,800 per person per year. So that's really important to us. That's about 10% of the city's budget. And let me just also remind you all that today starts Work Baltimore. We are over at the Convention Center, starts from noon to 5 p.m. and tomorrow from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. There are over 90 companies on hand at the Convention Center to interview and employ people. We anticipate about 3,000 individuals going through there. So just want to help get the word out. Okay. Any questions for me?
I have a question. Who is the card holder for your office? The card carrier, whoever carries the card most of the time.
Good morning. I'm Henry Raymond, Director of Finance for the City of Baltimore. The card in question, the card holder was Kim Morton of the mayor's staff.
And can I ask about the credit limit, finding number 2? It went from 15,000 to 40,000. What was needed? What sort of purchase was being made that it needed to be extended that much?
Okay. I've been joined by Aaron Sher Smith, City Purchasing Agent. Essentially, the credit card had a limit of 15,000. There was a need to purchase coats for one of the mayor's initiatives. The coats were estimated to be $24,000. So we increased the card limit under the delegated authority by city charter that the city purchasing agent has up to $25,000. So the card had a limit of $15,000. We increased it by $25,000 for a total of $40,000 in order to meet the turnaround time that was needed for the purchase of winter coats. Now, as the audit also points out, several hundred coats were donated, and many of those coats had to be sent to dry cleaning establishment because they had not been properly cleaned before they were donated to the city.
This amount of money, I mean, I guess technically you weren't supposed to go to the Board of Estimates for the coats, but don't you think you should have done a formal procurement for something that was tens of thousands of dollars?
Well,
It wasn't tens of thousands of dollars.
no.
$23,000.
Yeah. The real issue was it was within the delegated authority of the city purchasing agent. The only reason this issue is a finding is that we did not document the process. We didn't put a memo in the file to indicate on this particular date we increased the card by X amount. Other than that, there was nothing inappropriate with that particular transaction.
The auditor in an interview after the board meeting did question why it was done in this very informal way. Was this the best way that this could have been done, do you think?
At that point in time, it was decided that that was the best way to handle that particular transaction.
As you know, the city has had somewhat of a history of top-level people not properly handling funds. Ed Norris, Sheila Dixon with gift cards, et cetera. Is there not a firm process or a really tight process about the use of this? It's a credit card for different expenses. And isn't there have to account for every dollar you spend?
The answer is yes. In this particular instance, the appropriate administrative policy was not adhered to. And that's what you heard this morning, which is lack of retention of the receipts, not submitting the information in a timely manner as it related to the procurement card statements, the activity log, and the journal entry log not being submitted in a timely manner, the lack of documentation that was not available. So if there had been adherence to the administrative policy, this issue would not have arisen.
On the records that I've seen, there's like a $1,500 purchase from this July that there's a handwritten note on there saying this wasn't approved by the card holder. Are other people using this card other than the named holder?
In this particular instance, yes.
And is that allowed?
That is inconsistent with the AM policy. The administrative manual policy indicates that the card holder is the one who's authorized for transactions. In this particular instance, well-intentioned, well-meaning staff used the card in furtherance of city initiatives.
So it means the card is being kind of passed around to whoever needs it?
No, it was a very small group of people.
But it was more than, it was regularly being used by other people than was Morton.
Yes.
How many cards are there in the mayor's office?
There is currently only one card.
Were there more than that? Two.
There were two originally, and there is
So
currently
who's
one.
now the designated user?
Renee Newton is currently the only card holder for the mayor's office.
Does anyone face any disciplinary action over this?
Well, disciplinary action is a personnel issue, and we do not publicly discuss personnel matters.
How many P cards are there in the city?
We have approximately 120. I can clarify the actual numbers. They do fluctuate when people terminate.
Throughout city government?
Correct.
So this audit looked at a very narrow slice of that. I mean, it seems to us, I think, that this raises some flags about how they're being used. You can spend a lot of money on a credit card before someone says, wait a minute, you know? Is there any effort to kind of look at how they're being used? Who's using them? What are they being used for?
I think the primary concern isn't so much how they're being used, because as most of the transactions were actually appropriate, it's more of the documentation and process. And it was a labor-intensive manual process. We are improving that to make it easier for them to follow the procedures, but also easier for us to follow up behind them.
Mayor Pugh, this is your office. Do you want to address this first?
Well, first, as mayor, I didn't even know we had credit cards. Never used one, even when I travel. I don't charge food. Because when I travel, I eat. The only thing we charge is if it's a flight or a hotel. Never used a credit card. And I would ask the procurement department, as I said earlier, to tighten up their process and to make sure that we're using it and training people to use them properly. We don't, and that's why we only have one. I didn't even know how many credit cards we had. I didn't know city had credit cards because nobody informed me of those. But I can tell you that, you know, there is a process of purchase orders that folks should use first, and in emergency situations, you use P cards. And the initiative that they were talking about was the initiative for the Coats for the Homeless, which is a reimbursable through the Department of Human Services, because there is a fund that reimburses for those, and they will be reimbursed.
You know, the audit costs unquestionable. Do you agree with that description of some of the purchases?
No, I think that there's not a complete understanding. I mean, we do have human services issues, but we do have homeless people in our city. And during the fall, before the winter comes, this particular issue was around providing coats for the homeless. And when people donate coats and they need to be cleaned, we'll do that. But there's a reimbursable process through the Department of Human Services, and they can follow that process. I understand that that is already being done.
What about in the case of the lunches and the furniture and household items?
Well, the lunches are lunches that the chief of staff and other folks have had in the office. I've had lunches in the office as well. Again, my meals are always paid for because I just don't use credit cards to do that.
Can we ask one more question?
Sure.
Fiscal issues. We raise the police overtime issue a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But the number one paid person in the city of Baltimore who's been there for the past 4 years in that slot, 3 years, is a sergeant, a tactical sergeant, who made $150,000 in overtime in FY18. On top of $130,000 the year before. This guy's clearly the overtime king. I know when we bring up the issue of an audit of overtime, et cetera, we go to the FOP lawsuit and we can't do that. But is there anybody in the police department or in finance that is looking at the amount of overtime that certain individuals are making on a regular basis to say what's going on here?
Okay.
The answer is yes. BPD is looking at it. The finance department is looking at it. It's the subject of monthly council meetings. And we have an ongoing forensic audit as well.
The forensic audit is related to the lawsuit.
It's a separate issue. There's 2 phases: internal control and process and specific potential fraud and abuse.
So the other issue is, what do we do about it? And we're looking at a system that the fire department has put in place. And my understanding is that that process has been delayed. And I said, we don't need to delay the process. We need to move it forward as quickly as we can. They've gotten control of their overtime. The police department has to get control of their overtime as well.
What do they do?
They have a system, an online system that monitors and can tell you where people are. Just went over this one yesterday with our fire chief, looking at his process, who he's going to share with the police department and with other agencies that may have issues with overtime. But there is a database and a process, an online process that can be utilized, and he is having conversations, and my understanding is that we wanted to delay it, and I'm saying we need to move it forward.
You know what the reason for the delay is in the police department?
Technology.
Yeah, technologies. So what we're referring to, it's an automated application to more efficiently schedule staff, so that your staff can be more efficiently scheduled, that will help reduce costs so that you can avoid overtime where possible while staffing the functions at capacity that need to be staffed.
And the other thing is, Kendra Pollock, our data scientist, is measuring overtime in the police department. I think what you're talking about is drilling down to those key individuals who have accumulated overtime over a period of time.
It's the same people,
Right.
year after year after
Right.
year, that are taking home, it's almost undoable. These people must be living in a police department. So that's my question. Isn't there a policy that tells a supervisor, look, we don't want folks working 18-hour days?
Well,
You know?
Jane, we don't want police officers working 15-hour days. In fact, we don't want police officers working overtime because I don't think that it's mentally it's healthy for any police officer to work a certain amount of hours. And so part of that too is this drafting situation around overtime. And I'm looking forward to having a conversation with the new FOP person because, as you well know, part of our problem is having the schedule inside of the negotiation process, which it just should not be. But we have to have more officers. As you well know, when I walked in the store, we had 1,900, 2,100 officers in the police department. We were we're authorized for 2,800. We're getting closer, but we still were losing 25 officers a month, which totaled almost 300 a year, 600 by the time I got here. And so, you know, we're focused on getting more officers into the police department so that we don't have this. I think we've got to close those loopholes that you're talking about that allows any one or persons to be able to take advantage of the situation. Thank you all.
Will we have access, or will the public have access to the forensic audit that's being done right now in the police department? Or would that go into the FOP case and we'll be able to see it as well?
Have to defer to the law department regarding that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.